Hello, my name is Hai, and I'd like to welcome you to the AISES sessions. Today's topic, Play for Work, exploring a career in the games and esports industries. To discuss this, we've brought together a panel of speakers from both business and academia, beginning with Mike Riley, founder and CEO of the esports team Endemic, Mike Del Brocco, co-founder of Winstreak, a creator audience intelligence platform, and Dr. Daniel Saul, director at UNLV's Center for Gaming Innovation. Thanks, guys, for joining us on this panel. The focus of today's topic is how someone can get ready for a career in the gaming and esports industries. Working to play games? That's a job anyone who loves to play games is going to consider as a dream career. But let's help separate dreams from reality. Most people think when they hear esports, they think players. When they hear gaming industry, they think programmers and stuff. But the industry is a lot broader than that, as we all know. And hopefully today we can shed some light on the different jobs and careers that are available, and including the broad span of what games really are. And where we're going to start there is a great way for me to segue into your kind of introductions for you guys. So let's start with Mike Riley. Could you introduce yourself, tell us what you do, and a little bit about your company?
Yeah, so my name is Michael Riley. Thanks for the introduction. Hi. I am the CEO and founder of Endemic. I own the team with Paul George of the Los Angeles Clippers. We currently are competing in several titles. We are in Mortal Kombat. We won our first championship in Mortal Kombat 11. We are in Street Fighter. We're also in Hearthstone and a couple other titles as well. And we also have obviously content creators too. Prior to that, myself, I was with Apple for 10 years, and then I left to start Endemic.
Cool. Dr. Saul, next.
Hello. Yes, I work here at UNLV, and I am the director of a very cool program we have called the Center for Gaming Innovation. And what I do is basically I teach students every year who take my class and participate in my program, and I teach the fundamentals of game design now. We're here in Las Vegas, so the games we tend to focus on, perhaps not surprisingly, are the games you might find in a casino, but we do focus on all types of games. And so I teach my students game design, the fundamental principles of game design, but really what we do that's cool and special in my program is each student who takes my class is challenged to come up with their own concept and develop a preliminary concept for their own unique game. Some of my students choose to do casino games. Some students focus on other types of games. We're a very applied class, and my goal as your professor is to help you get an idea that's so good we can commercialize it, we can protect it, some through trademarks and patents, and we can sell it, or find you a development partner to take that and turn it into a viable commercial product that is out there in the market and being played.
Cool.
Awesome.
And last but not least, the other Michael.
Hey, I'm Michael Del Brocco. I'm actually going to start with my background a little bit, but so I got into esports about 10 or 15 years ago as someone who wanted to be a competitive player myself, and that transitioned into being the director of esports at Team Curse, that's now known as Team Liquid. And so I managed 60 different professional esports athletes across the globe. After that, I did a five-year term at GoDaddy and just did general tech as a product manager. And now I'm back in the space with Winstreak. So Winstreak is an audience intelligence platform. So we help teams like Michael, the other Michael, with their creators, and to give insights on how to grow their personal brands and then grow the organization's brands through them.
Cool. Thanks, Michael. So going into the meat of the topic in terms of what students should be looking at if they're interested in a career in games and esports. As the one academic on the panel, Dr. Saul. So let's start with you, Dan. If they're a high school student, they're looking to start college, or they're already in college, and they're interested in a career in games. What should they focus on? What about your program? Is your program an undergrad program? How did they get into it? What can they expect when they're in the program? What do you say?
So in my program, it's open to anybody, and not just UNLV students. I have people who take my class from places like New Jersey, California, Poland, Canada. You know, we have people who join in from all over the world. And a lot of people reach out to me and they say, well, I'm not good at math. I don't know how to program. I don't think this class is right for me. And I'm like, stop right there. That's not what you, skills like math skills, art skills, programming skills, yes, those are integral parts of game design. But when we're talking about gaming innovation, when we're talking about that starting point of like creating something from nothing, envisioning this experience in this world that doesn't exist as such, you know, all that matters is creativity and the drive to do it and build it. That's what I'm looking for, right? You may not be a great artist, but I promise you, we can find artists that can collaborate with you to help translate what's in your head into something on the page, or more likely the computer screen. You may not be a programmer, but there are very talented programmers out there who are looking for opportunities to collaborate with people who can help them develop their own skills and who also have interest in game design. So if you are a talented programmer, or you are a gifted artist, or you have great math skills, then I would say, then I would say those are amazing advantages to have if you want to be a game inventor. But at the end of the day, it starts with this creative idea, and the realization of any new game product is going to require a team of talented people who work well together and who complement each other. So I'd say the most important thing you need if you want to start, you know, developing games or thinking about a career in game design is the passion and the commitment to like taking a spark of an idea and being able to like think out all of the pathways and all of the elements that would be required to take that spark and realize it into an actual concept of a game that could be developed.
Yeah, that's great. And I think what could be interesting here as well, in addition to all that, is that, you know, not a lot of people, when they think of game design and doing video games and all that, kind of draw the line and connect the dots to a slot machine in Vegas. But in essence, those are games too. And they have unique challenges because, you know, you get people that you have a very different player profile. You have very different play time. You get, you know, maybe 10, 15 minutes at a go, maybe even less. And they're not, it's not something they can take home and play with them. Although, you know, now with internet gaming and stuff like that, that could change. You know, does that, you know, kind of make it more interesting, challenging, different? You know, how do you see that equation?
So we do focus on casino games in my program at UNLV, you know, because we are here in Las Vegas, and all of the big companies that manufacture these games have a home base here in Las Vegas. So it makes a lot of sense. Casino game design is fascinating because it's a very different type of gaming experience because it involves, you know, gambling, which is a different game experience in and of itself, and a different sort of activity for people to engage in. From the invention perspective, right? I like to say that I give my students a bit of an advantage because there aren't a lot of, you know, there are a few people who really understand how. There are a lot of people who know how to build these games, but if we look at the entire gaming ecosphere, right, not many people who would consider themselves game designers and game inventors really fully understand how casino games work. And so I always say, if you're interested in game design, even if you don't want to build casino games, knowing how to design those games might give you a bit of an advantage as a designer competitively. The other interesting thing about casino games is that they can be patented, which is essentially a patent is essentially a document from the government that gives you exclusive right to offer a particular invention. And you can patent casino games, and you can license or sell those to the companies that build and develop and offer these games in casinos and in other formats. So there is, you know, I have had students who have no programming talent, no art talent, really just had an idea, but that idea was so well defined in their head that we could, and so clever that we could turn it into a patent or some other form of intellectual property and just directly sell or license it to an existing manufacturer.
Great. Well, next, let's talk to Michael Del Brocco. You started in esports, and then, you know, now you're, you know, you went to GoDaddy, and then now you're in a metrics company. So I think, you know, you've seen, you know, quite a wide breadth in the gaming and the crossover to esports industry, and, you know, touched on various touch points because, you know, as a competitive player, then as a team and managing teams, then going now to a metrics, it's, almost totally different worlds. What would you say, to somebody who is looking at the games industry today, and saying like, hey, look, I'd love to have a career in that. And we know a lot of times, when we think about, I know when I was young and we're thinking of getting into games business, it's like cool, you could actually play and make a living. How much of that is, reality in terms of day to day, and what should, a student looking at trying to get into this industry, what should they look at, and how can they learn more about this industry before getting into it? You're muted.
I would say the way, that I found my way into the industry was always trying to solve an existing problem. So something I also didn't mention in my background is that the first project that really helped me jump into a profession into esports was actually creating Codpedia, which is just a wiki for competitive Call of Duty, where you could track, different tournament placements and things like that. So, I would suggest, if you're a person who can kind of look at just the industry and say, hey, there's something missing here, something like that. This industry is great to work with. It's very collaborative. People are, really interested in hearing your thoughts. My background's in product, so for me, I'm a customer advocate. I'm going to, put myself in the customer's shoes, and I'm going to say, okay, for this experience or for this software or product or whatever it may be, video game in this case, how do I create the best experience for the customer? So, I've always found success just, again, by putting myself in the customer's shoes and, doing what's right for them. And so with Winstreak, that's, kind of what we're trying to do, right? We see that, more and more people are, interested in esports every single day. But with our product, it's hard to get data and reporting that's very accurate. There's a lot of generalized numbers out there. So for us, we identified an area where, teams could benefit from a solution that helped them identify pros and cons of their gamers, and then how to, help them improve, just as an example.
Cool. So Mike Riley, from the team ownership part of it, and you come from Apple, so you're in the IT tech business where most STEM students would be looking at, but then you're now in esports. What's the biggest difference, do you think, from your perspective, from the Silicon Valley tech business to esports? How big a departure is that?
I would say it's not as big of a departure as you'd think. It's to Michael's point, it's still both are very collaborative. So I think that managing effective teams, and I don't mean just like competitive teams, I mean like managing effective teams even in the back of house, behind the scenes, making sure that everybody is set up for success, and there are you have goals to hit or projects to manage, and then obviously there's also the competitive side of it for the esports side that doesn't really necessarily exist in in a traditional tech company, unless again, to Michael's point, you're looking at product and you have competitors that way, where you're looking to be the best in class of whatever product you're looking at. I mean, I guess you could say that could work on that side as well. But other than that, it's really like he said, and like I said earlier, highly collaborative. Really, there is no one person that just runs the show. As much as people even think in like the filmmaking business here in Los Angeles, obviously, I have a production background. That's how I actually got hired to work for Apple. And in the same way, it's just like on a set, or just like in the production business. Like, yeah, sure, people think like, oh, well, the director, they just say everything and then everyone just listens, and it's really not like that. I mean, it's very, very collaborative business, and obviously the bleed over in content when it comes to esports. I mean, esports, you can't really have esports without content. You have to be able to tell those stories. You have to be able to build those narratives. So I think that there's I've said it before that I feel like everything that I had done prior to starting Endemic allowed me to start Endemic and run and equipped me with the skills necessary to be able to do a job like this effectively. because it is esports does touch so many different industries, and there's a lot of bleed over. So, I mean, if you really want to set yourself up for success in the esports business, you want to really be well-rounded.
Great. Now, what got you started, before you got into the whole tech business and, what was your focus in school? Was games always been a focus for you, that you had wanted to be in this industry, or did you stumble into this industry?
Okay.
What would you say to students today, who are thinking like, oh, I want to grow up to be an esports athlete, or I want to be a caster, or I
Right.
want to be, a team manager?
Great question. So, I mean, my original love of my life was games, like from a very young age. And then over time, I got into more competitive gaming because I like the idea of competing. And what ended up happening was I started playing a game called Magic the Gathering professionally, like semi-professionally, I guess you could say, while I was still having my career and when I was still in school. And what I went to school for, actual college for, is entertainment business. So I have a degree in entertainment business with a focus on film. So it was always a big battle between like being able to play competitively on the weekends and then also like be able to make sure that like I'm focusing on schoolwork too, or like projects. It was definitely really hard to balance the two, but ultimately I feel like, again, they both fed my career, because it's kind of like very left brain, right brain, right? So it's almost like golden brain, where you have to like have these two disciplines and two focuses, but that's literally what esports is. So I would say that's kind of where I started, and there's just so many avenues that one can go down if they want to be a caster, if they want to, manage a team, if they want to, or if they are really skilled and gifted at competitive play. I mean, we see a lot of players in the business do that, where they're they start as competitive player and then they're doing really well, and they establish a career doing that, and then when they decide to retire, then all of a sudden they're on the other side of it, where they might have had really great leaders around them who inspired them, or they learned a lot from, and then they move on to managing or coaching or other positions like that. So there really is a wide range of avenues and paths one can take, and it's really just about like what your passion is, right? And like what drives you, because you're gonna perform and the best if you're waking up every day and like loving what you do, right? So it's kind of like you just have to figure out what you love and then just go from there.
Yeah. To Michael's point, I went to school for business administration, right? But like all the way through high school and college, I just told myself I was going to be a marketer. Didn't really know what that meant at the time, but that's what I was going to do. And I went from playing games like semi-professionally as well in Call of Duty, straight into managing these different teams and players. And it was really me just trying to figure it out. And really over time, what I figured out is that I didn't want to be a marketer, right? Like I wanted to be the one with the roadmap. I wanted to be the one with the strategy and figuring out, how do we solve this problem at hand? And that's kind of what led me to the product side. But I would say, just speaking from the product side, it's very similar to what Michael was saying as well.
Dan, did you always think that you were going to be a professor at a university?
Well, I certainly didn't when I started. I came to Las Vegas. I mean, my background to kind of reinforce this idea that anyone can invent games. I mean, my background is sociology, right? And I was, I thought I was going to be a professor in sociology, and I had an interest in games, so I was studying games and game design. And I stumbled on this class that was being offered at UNLV for the first time about building your own game. I took it. And that's the funny thing about becoming a game designer, right? I'd never designed a game until I took this class and was challenged to come up with games in the casino space and for that particular class. And I was like, wait, hey, I'm pretty good at this, right? Like I enjoy it. My ideas aren't bad. And then I sort of got more involved in the class, and then I found out, hey, I'm not just good at doing it, I'm good at teaching it. And so, which is how I wound up becoming the director of this program at UNLV. And it's a talent I didn't know I had until I actually was given the challenge to come up with, create, and develop. So that's why my advice to anyone, right? I mean, if inventing games excites you, start inventing games. grab a sketchbook. You don't have to be good at art to create a game, right? All games start with rough scribbles and wonky pathways, right? But if you have a passion for doing games, my advice is start inventing games. Have a book full of game inventions. Most of them will never see the light of day. That's okay. It's the process of inventing. It's the process of thinking through all those steps that makes you better. And whether that game gets made or not, by the time you've gone through your fourth or fifth new concept for whatever game you want to create, right? A story-focused game, a puzzle-style game, a combative action game, a fantasy math game. I don't know, right? You know, as you know, and the things you need to think about are like, what's the game going to look like? What's the story going to be? What's the mechanic? What am I going to ask my players to do in order to go from point A to point B in this game? Just doing that, right? Just in your notebook, every time you do it, you're going to get better. And you know what? Sometimes, don't be afraid to like pull out your ideas and show them to family and friends and teachers and say, what do you think of this idea? If you have an art teacher, right, show them your idea. You've got a computer science teacher, show them your idea, right? Don't be afraid to talk about it to the people, to family and friends, right? They care about you and they're probably going to be very excited to see something creative that you've come up with. So, there are lots of programs, university programs and online tutorials that can help you become a good game developer. But, at the end of the day, it starts with you saying, I want to build something, right? And so start building. That's my best advice. And that's how I sort of wound up where I wound up in this role right now.
Well, one interesting thing that I found especially in recent years, and it might have been that way for quite a while now, probably at least a decade or so, where the system of education that we have today, in society, is one that drives you through school. You go through high school, you go to college, you get a degree, you come out, then you get a job, and some people will realize, oh man, I spent all these years in school studying for something that I actually don't love doing, and they end up doing something else. So how can we, and especially, I'd love to hear your perspective as an academic, Dan. How do we jibe the two things together? We don't do a lot of apprenticeships these days. We don't do a lot of internships anymore, especially if it's not part of your program that you're in. What is the best way to mesh the two, to coexist in terms of experimenting with what you think could be interesting, discover whether or not it's interesting before you commit 4 years to a degree program to get a degree that you might not use. How do you see that working?
So I am a very big fan of my model, right? That is actually somewhat unique to UNLV. And I'm not just talking about the casino game part. Students will take my class and like early on, they're like, well, how do I get a good grade in your class? I'm like, you get a good grade in my class by showing up and trying, right? I mean, I have students who've invented games and they've sold those games I have had a few students invent games and sell them for like money, right? But that's not how you get an A in my class, right? You get an A in my class by showing up and trying your best, right? And taking whatever idea you have. Not all my students have ideas that we can turn around and sell. I don't care. I want you to take whatever idea you have and develop it as far as you can. I have, I find my class, I'm like, I want artists, I want computer scientists, I want math majors, I want people from business or whatever discipline to take my class, because you all bring talents and knowledge, right, that can be applied to game industry. But I think you're absolutely right in saying that, we need to give people more opportunities to get hands-on in practice, right, and actually like work practically in the field, particularly if we want to like attract creative, and entrepreneurial type people to like create new things. You need to give them that place where they can create new stuff and get the feedback they need to improve, right? That's the most valuable thing. I can't make someone creative, but I can help a creative person channel and focus their energies and learn in that process so that they can focus their creative energies in areas which are more likely to develop successful and enjoyable products. And again, different students have different skills and abilities, and that's what makes it really fun to work in the space.
So from the other side of the equation, the two Michaels that we have, you guys, have been successful in your businesses. Gone through multiple companies. Mike Riley, you've been the largest company in the world, tech company at Apple, and and Mike Brocco, you've created your own companies. You've been an entrepreneur. You've done different things. You've been one of the largest esports teams in the world today. Same question to you. What's your advice to somebody who might be looking at the games industry through maybe rose-colored glasses, because they're just looking at it from the outside. They think, oh, it'd be a great career for me to get into esports or get into video games. I want to write the next COD, stuff like that. What would be your advice to them?
But from my side, and I know there's a lot more opportunities in esports now than there was 10 years ago, but my suggestion would be to start getting your hands dirty, right? Like, when I started, you had to be a content creator yourself. You had to be a player yourself. You had to, I don't know, be an agent for someone or help them with their brand or something like that, and I think that's what helped me the most identify what I wanted to do. And so that would be my suggestion.
No, I mean, I think that's great. I was going to say something similar to that. Basically, I would say start doing your research first. So before you even go down that path or apply for a position or decide what path you want necessarily, start learning all this stuff on your own. So, there's so many resources that are on the internet that you can, just start following all the people that are in the role that you would want to be in, there's obviously plenty of YouTube. There's a lot of resources when it comes to that. Basically learn everything about the role that you want to be in, or what your dream job is, and figure out who did it before you, and figure out what you can emulate, and then start to really kind of be the change you want to see. Get yourself equipped to do that job before you even apply. Make sure you have all that, everything down. You know who would who your competitors would be, who would be people that are in that same space, people that have left that space and why they didn't like it. There's so much knowledge that you can have that can set you up for success to be able to be in the position, your dream position, or even if you go broad and you look at, hey, okay, so I'm not sure which exact role I want, but what I can do is I can learn what's the price of admission for any of these roles? What are the things that I absolutely need to have that are basically non-negotiable to be able to do these things? And then at least, learn that, so then you can kind of go wide and then start to hone over time. That's probably the best advice I would give when it comes to finding the position that you really want, your dream position.
Great. Well, there's a good time for me to jump into this other topic in terms of the STEM business, and to a certain degree as well, it applies to gaming and esports. It's a male-dominated industry. I mean, look at this panel, right? All guys.
Unfortunately.
Here. And I think it loses a little bit of the diversity because of that. What would you say to a young woman today that's looking at a STEM career and looking at the potential of designing games and making an entry into this field? What would be your advice? Let's start with you, Mike Riley.
I'd say, first and foremost, at this point, obviously it's a lot better than it was 10 years ago. At this point, start reaching out, be open to just reaching out to the other women that are already in this space, and how they can, because they're going to love to talk to you. They're going to love to talk to you and give you advice or share their own personal stories, or, that's kind of the way it is. And I can't think of a single woman in this space who wouldn't want to lift up other women to bring them into this space as well. So I would say absolutely, if you could, say if someone has open DMs or something, hey, can I pick your brain? Hey, the worst thing they could do is say no, but I just honestly, I can't imagine every single woman that I know in this space would love to get that DM. So I'm pretty sure that you'd never really find resistance to that as long as they have time. But other than that, that would be my first piece of advice. Second piece of advice would just be believe that you can do it, and believe that because the idea or the any kind of doubt, is just going to hamstring you right off the bat. So it's kind of like that quote, like, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. If you think that it's a male dominated industry and you don't belong, then it's going to stay a male dominated industry. And obviously there's a lot that men are going to have to do. They still do better to make women feel comfortable in the space. But I would definitely say that, don't doubt yourself, or don't think it's going to stay that way forever. And I think it would be a great way to do that. A great way to do that would be to talk to others who have already, other women who have already entered the space successfully.
Michael Brocco?
Yeah, I would just add on to that. I think that was great advice, right? Like, I think some of the best coworkers I have ever had in the space have been female. And I see, at least on Twitter, on my timeline all the time, other females in the industry, trying to help others just grow their careers. So just +1 to what Michael said. And then, also, I guess Michael also said this too, but like, yeah, don't be afraid, because it is male dominated right now. I would say, I feel like every year there's more and more women. I feel like it's going to eventually even out, and like you said, there's a lot men can do to help with that. But, don't be afraid to dive in. Like, video games are for everyone.
Dan, how's the gender balance in your class right now? Is it also unfortunately skewed towards male?
Here's the interesting story about my class. It is absolutely more men have taken the class than women by a significant number. But my class has issued 20 patents in the last 8 or 9 years. Those are US patents issued that are now assets and protected intellectual property. Of those 20 patents, 8 of those patents, women were the first name inventor, right? So nice. Women, I'm like, please, like, I want diversity of all sorts in my class, because clearly the women who take my class excel at innovation. So do the men, but they're overrepresented in terms of the number of patents relative to the number of women who've taken my class. And I have 2 thoughts about your question. The first one, I've never played a game in my life, casino game, slot game. I play lots of video games, all different kinds of video games. I've never played a game in my life and ever thought to myself, oh, well, clearly this was a woman did this, or a man did this, or right? Like, the gender of the creator does not come into the gameplay experience generally, even though some games might be more tailored for men, more tailored for women based on story and theme and art, right? Who knows? You have no idea, who did it, who actually was sitting there coding and doing the art. So in that sense, games can be demographic, right? Not demographic, democratic, I should say, right? Games are popular because they're fun. Games are popular because they appeal to certain people. So, don't be afraid. So again, it comes back to build and design and harness those resources, that are out there. I mean, it's if you have an interest in programming, you could essentially go from 0 to, you could develop great programming skills for games just by looking on the free resources that are available. Not that I am discouraging looking for academic support too from schools and programs, but that's all out there online, tutorials about how to use these different programs. There are sites like Itch, for example, that allow you to just create a little game and put it out there. And like, maybe it appeals to 50 people, maybe it appeals to 1,000 people, get the feedback, build that portfolio, right? Because at the end of the day, if you want to be a designer of games, nobody knows who you are when they play your game. They only know you through what you put on the screen. And that leads me to my other point, which is just, my encouragement my encouragement for diversity in gaming, which includes, more women in the process of creating and developing and imagining games. Because what are games but an expression of ourselves, right? The stories and the mechanics and the art and the experience. It's every game designer is expressing themselves in some way, right? And our expressions are a product of who we are and our experiences and our backgrounds, right? So the more diversity we get, right, and the more voices that feel comfortable and are encouraged, I would encourage everyone to jump into the game innovation space and create their own games. The more new experiences we're all going to get to experience and play, right? Because that's the root of creativity in gaming. Is it really comes down to our perspective and who we are and the lives we've lived. So we definitely, as an industry, need all voices and all perspectives, because it leads to better products and better experiences for our players.
Excellent. Thanks. And I think especially for this, this community that we're speaking to with the indigenous nations, it is a voice that's underrepresented in games.
Yes.
We see games from a very interesting perspective. I think, like Mike Riley said earlier, from his experience in film business, because of Hollywood's domination in film and because of the composition of Hollywood as we know today, a lot of the content we see comes from a very narrow perspective on the world. And I think, one beautiful thing, and in fact, I think a lot of things have changed in recent years where programming tools have become much more available. Mobile platform has opened up audience, around the world to even, less represented audiences, has allowed us to see games and expressions from cultures that, we normally wouldn't associate with the content that we view, that they're not the typical American or dare I say white American view of the world, and it presents a much broader, interesting cultural perspective from different perspectives in the world. So we're coming to the end of this panel, and typically the usual panels end with one good advice. I like to tip that around. I like to say with the video game industry and esports, there are, I think, a lot of myths. Like Mike Riley was saying earlier, when people think of the movie business, they think, oh, there's the director, whatever he says goes, and he says and everybody does. What would be the one thing that you think that you would like to dispel from the gaming industry, and or the esports industry, that students would benefit from today? So let's start with you, Dan.
I think I would dispel the notion that you have to have specific skills to be a contributor, to make a positive contribution to gaming innovation, right? And look, if you have those skills, fantastic, and I would encourage anyone to pursue those STEM skills, right? But don't think that, oh, I'm too unfamiliar with programming language, I'm too unfamiliar, right? So many people are better than me, it's too late for me to get into the game. It's not true. It's absolutely not true, right? Like anyone can start as a game inventor at any time, and can immerse themselves into this world and develop the skills required to succeed very quickly. I think, right? Commitment really is the most important, and passion really are the most important factors to being successful. So don't worry that you don't have the skills, right? As you build games, you develop those skills. It comes naturally through the process.
Yeah, I think Dan just mentioned a great point about building the skills as you go, right? Like, I think I'm honestly the perfect example of that. I'm not a programmer, I'm not a designer, but I build software. So just it's about just exposing yourself to what's out there. Don't get down on yourself if you don't know what's going on. And then just try different things, right? Like I said, I started out as a marketer and I thought I was really going to like that. I didn't really like that, but I was able to identify things I did like, and then that led me to product management and what's that? And just watching YouTube videos and things like that. And that's actually how I got into product management. I was a marketer at my corporate job at GoDaddy, and I said, hey, I've been looking into product management a lot. I don't know a lot about it, but I've been taking courses on the side, watching YouTube videos, and I was lucky enough to transfer over. So I think just don't be scared, especially if you don't know something. Yeah.
I mean, very similar in the same vein as what the other two gentlemen said. I mean, really, it's I would dispel that it's impossible, or that it's too small, and while the community can be pretty small, in the way of a lot of people know each other, if you do the wrong thing, it's and you're either disrespectful to the business or others in the business. I mean, people are going to kind of know about it, and your reputation is really important. But just because it's a small industry, it's a lot wider than people think because it covers so many other industries, and the skill sets, it goes so wide. So I would say, for people that are afraid or think, oh, that's like a dream, that's I shouldn't dream that big, or that's to work in gaming or to work in esports, it's not realistic or whatever, that needs to be dispelled, because I know a lot of people who who think it's just not like realistic to even try. And I think that's like the biggest, you know, while there might be some bad actors gatekeeping here and there like the industry has done a lot to kind of course correct that and like stop that from happening. So maybe that became a stigma, you know, like again, 10 years ago or something, but really there's been so many improvements in the last decade and specifically in the last 5 years that definitely make it open and not, and you know, to newcomers to grow the industry and also to, you know, to continue it for decades to come. So I would say that, you know, that it's a pipe dream or something would be the thing that I would want to dispel to those people that are hopeful. And you know, they say that, you know, luck is when opportunity meets preparation, right? So it's like prepare yourself now, start preparing yourself, make yourself valuable now, regardless of if you even have a position that's open that you want to apply to. You know, invest in yourself now, prepare yourself now, and then, you know, when the opportunity arises, there's a good chance that you might be part of that. So that's what I would say.
Excellent. Well, thanks guys for taking the time to, you know, be on this panel to talk to students about a career in gaming and esports. Again, we have Dr. Daniel Saul, Director for the Center of Gaming Innovation at UNLV. We have Michael Del Brocco, co-founder of Winstreak, and Michael Riley, founder and CEO of Endemic. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is great.